Welcome to this, the sixth in our series of Totally Teal podcasts, our conversations about teal or next stage organisational thinking. During our last podcast, we explored the changing face of organisational development. We now have a chance to explore the three core abiding principles or themes that are fundamental to the makeup of these next stage organisations. On this occasion, I kick the conversation off. Okay, so welcome to the Next Stage Organisation podcast. What we want to talk about here is about teal or next stage thinking and its three defining themes, that of evolutionary purpose, wholeness practices, and self-management.
Excellent. And let's take evolutionary purpose first, where purpose is the very ground, the coherence within the culture, the cultural soil, if you like, of the living system that enables the organisation to thrive. And so to be clear, what we mean here is not a rejigging of the mission statement or posting a new values charter on the wall. We mean developing a deep, resonant sense of purpose within the organisation. And that happens when a threshold of people in the organisation deeply resonate with the organisational sense of purpose. So a good example here, a client of mine, Pucker Herbs, provide herbal tea. Funnily enough, we're actually having a cup now, which is very nice. Herbal tea and the herbal supplements provider, now part of Unilever, wholly owned as part of Unilever. They take people and have regular offsites, deep immersions, something that we've explored in partnership with the Eden Project. People going off, having deep immersions and exploring their personal purpose, whilst also being aware of the organisational purpose and exploring that relationship between the two, and then coming back into the organisation and seeing how that resonance can live as part of the day-to-day culture. Then that resonance of organisational and personal purpose allows for extraordinary things to happen. It creates the vitality that we need, but it does need some nurturing and some careful cultivation.
So, in other words, Giles, purpose enlivens the living system. And maybe I just want to pull out and focus on two key functions there. The first function being the North Star against which individuals can make decisions. Now, this is going to be critical to an organisation when there are no longer bosses to tell people what to do. But it also supports the second defining theme of teal, which, Chris, you mentioned at the top of the podcast, that being wholeness. Wholeness invites people to turn up to work, not just as their job title, but as themselves, bringing all their talents and passions into their work. And in embracing wholeness, what organisations are essentially recognising is that there's a commercial advantage in doing so. And as a result of that, they actively seek ways to encourage people to use all their talent, all their motivations and energies in energising their roles. And as a result, what these organisations see is that they see an increase in productivity and engagement across the workforce. So having an organisational purpose that people can emotionally resonate with serves to increase engagement. It's a kind of a double whammy, really.
Indeed. And double whammy is interesting because these first two concepts really are inherently required in order to be really effective in the third theme, i.e. of self-management. Totally reliant upon getting really clear on purpose so people have a North Star and a reference point that they can constantly refer to, and welcoming all aspects of the diversity of the person that is walking through the door allows individual groups to come together locally and start to take personal ownership of their part in the hierarchy of purpose that they exist in, serving the whole organisation. The clarity of that makes for a much more reactive and responsive and energised organisation, to take your word, Sarah. The interesting thing is it's no real surprise, therefore, that we see major leaps in performance because people feel locally motivated, locally energised and fulfilled. Patagonia, is an exemplar of purpose as a focus to its organisation. But they really reinforce that with a wholeness practice principle that sits underneath that. So when looking for companies that really illustrate their own unique versions of these themes, it's fairly easy to identify where that particular organization has landed. Morningstar is a different company that really does focus more on the self-management element of this, although they do have wholeness and purpose components clearly running through. So both of these still engage with these principles, but their mix is totally unique. And I think that's a really fundamental piece with regard to all of this. Every single organization makes its own interpretation of how next stage thinking or teal thinking speaks to them.
Yep. And this self-management piece really is kind of like the engine room, really, that enables these next stage organizations to come alive, to be truly living organizations. And so our next podcast is going to focus on just that, self-management.
Thanks, Giles. So, I hope you've enjoyed this discussion examining the core themes of next stage organisations. And if you would like to explore more of our Totally Teal conversations, then please do subscribe by clicking the button on our Totally Teal channel on Podbean. I look forward to meeting you at our next Totally Teal podcast conversations, where we will be exploring distributed leadership, the engine room of self-management. Until the next time. Bye.